Built and sold 5 companies and managed over $5 billion in advertising media investment across hundreds of well-known brands including Target, Walmart, Hulu, and many, many more.
All those clients were generated without a sales team. You have to get your hands dirty. As glamorous as my life has been and is, it requires a lot of work to get those. Met with Johnson & Johnson and met with M&M Mars and met with Procter & Gamble and had the conversations. It goes down to math because everything is grounded in data. You know, at the end of the day, it's about COGS to MSRP. If you don't have a minimum of 50% plus, don't bother doing e-commerce. I would literally tell them this product is not going to ever work. It's just a death march. We'd invest 90 days of money to see if the business would work. If 90% bounced on the page you directed them to, something's wrong with the traffic. So in digital, it's like the 80-20 rule. Most recent valuation of 1.6 billion. In every startup, you have to first.
Hi everyone, today we're here with Dumont Project, a founder who's built and sold 5 companies and managed over $5 billion in advertising media investment across hundreds of well-known brands including Target, Walmart, Hulu, and many, many more. Don, just to start, how would you just summarize and describe your journey as a founder from where you started trading stock options on the floor to where you are now?
Yeah. I guess I would start with that some of my strengths are intellectually curious. I always am in a state of learning and learning, especially in doing the business that I did, which is lots of digital marketing. You have to be technology first, and you have to spend at least a day a week just reading and, you know, even taking AI courses. So I think that's a really important thing. And then the transition from trading stock options to being in a direct consumer company and I did this with my twin sister Desiree, and we had a few partners. The first couple companies, of course, the last one that was on my own, but all of them require grit. And I say that because as an entrepreneur, you're always thinking about how you can build the business, and you're always thinking about what are the success metrics and how can I move the metrics of the business. You have to lean in. And then you have to get your hands dirty. I say that very sweetly, but as glamorous as my life has been and is, it requires a lot of work to get. There's no shortcut. I wish I could tell you. I wouldn't recommend just going out and trying to be an influencer because I just don't think that's a long-term business model. And it's relying on just you versus real success in businesses is meeting the customer where they're at and then actually taking that meeting the customer where they're at and then delighting it. Your business is about bringing new customers in, and then whatever customers you have, making them happy so they come back for more. So the business models that I always work with where our success is about the repeat customers. So if you are happy with the service or the product, you're going to keep coming back and buying more.
And then how did you have that pivot from the stock options into then you're starting your own thing with your twin sister?
Well, my sister was in the advertising business, and she was working for a company called Key Media at the time. And they were doing infomercials, if you know what that is, those half-hour commercials at night, and they had a phone number on them, an 800 number on them. And it was very basic. It was like, it was very simple, but it was very good in the sense that, a commercial on CNN had a phone number, and a commercial on like Lifetime television had another phone number. And so you can track and measure what sales happened or what sales occurred. And then more advanced way of approach would be how I was doing it in options. I was looking at if you keep seeing success with these specific stocks and there's a seasonality to those stocks, right? Like in Q4 and Q1, you then would double down. And so you would manage your advertising portfolio like you would manage a stock or options portfolio. You double down on what works well, and then you'd have like an 80-20, 20% towards testing new things and 80% towards control. And you'd be in a constant state of testing, but only 20% of your budget, which is very much like you would approach in stock. You'd have your test bed and then you have your control. So I'm really just applying that type of methodology and thinking. And then of course the wave of digital happened. And then that just brought it to a whole nother level. And then in terms of just people wanting to transact online versus through a phone number, and then the adoption of digital, just, right now in Europe, more than 30% of people buy direct to
Hmm.
consumer through the internet. Where still the balance 70% are, 65% are buying still in store. US is a 75-25, and then in APAC, Asia Pacific, it's 50-50. So each market's different. And then you kind of have to think about that if you have a global business, how much do
Yeah.
I invest and what's the cost? It goes down to math, and that's where the translation is so easy. It's how much does it cost me to acquire a customer in Asia or in Japan, for example, and what's the lifetime repeat rate of that customer in Asia? And then how does that look in like England? And how does that look like in Portugal? And how does it look like in
Yeah.
US? So you have to think about the customer acquisition cost and then the customer life cycle, meaning the number of repeat purchases.
And I imagine,
It all boils down to math,
yeah.
which is
And though
like,
I imagine like
yeah,
the statistics are different in every country, like you're mentioning, it's
yeah,
always it
yeah,
comes down that over the past few years, we could really see an increase, in D2C and people buying online and e-com brands.
yeah,
I bet
yeah,
like there's probably a lot of saturation in that market of people starting their own digital marketing agency and starting the media. When
yeah.
you started, was it hard to break into that space, and how did you differentiate
Was hard.
yourself?
It was very
Yeah.
hard. It was very hard. I mean, it's because you're against much larger, a lot of the agencies were owned by holding companies, and so they just had endless budgets. But
Yeah.
really, it was about being a niche, and about being really good at that niche because everyone could say, yeah, I can do e-commerce, but like, really, how much have they done in e-commerce?
Hmm.
There's like talking it and there's like walking it, right? There's a difference. So the point of difference at the end of the day was your strategy, your execution, your planning execution, your testing. Do you have a test plan or not? And
Hmm.
then the team. So it really boils down to strategy. I always kind of put into buckets. It boils down to your people, what your process is in terms of what your plan is, what tools are you using to execute, because tools, especially in the AI world, are super
Hmm.
important. And then, and then your data. I always think of data and measurement, because everything is grounded in data. So you have to make sure you're able to measure incrementality or measure that this test works or this test didn't work. So I feel like that is what sets you apart.
Hmm.
And in a world where everyone says, I can do that or me too, well, where are your case studies? Where
Yeah.
are your clients that are talking about you that said that you made a difference for them? So when you have, I mean, I can't even put all the logos on. Like, I can't even put all them on LinkedIn. I can put like just a small portion of them. All those clients, were generated without a sales team. So you're talking to the person who actually went there and met with Johnson and Johnson and met with
Hmm.
M&M Mars and met with Procter and Gamble and had the conversations. And at the end of the day, I had to show them how our approach, our team, our execution in terms of how we do things, our data is better than what they have.
Yeah.
And thank goodness they took a risk and believed. And at the end of the day, we delivered for them. So happy repeat customers.
And I
Yeah.
imagine, like, as you started to grow your business and you had all these more case studies, it was a lot easier to get some of those big conglomerates. And like you said, if you look on your LinkedIn, you can see all these amazing big brands that are household names that
Yeah.
you've worked with. But when you
Yeah.
started, who was your first customers and how did you manage to
Oh my
get them
God.
before having that proof?
There's so there's so many businesses, so I can't be
Yeah.
specific like that. But it's at the end of the day, it's grounded in it's trust. It's about trust and having them trust you.
Mhm.
So I was always very much a consultative approach. And when I say like, when McKinsey hired me to do work with their clients, it's trust and
Yeah.
it's reputation. And when you don't have that, that's very hard. But really, what you do is I always ask them, I said, listen, I'm not going to make a recommendation of what we should be doing about your business. Please provide me with your tools. Like, so open up your Meta account to me, open
Hmm.
up your Google AdWords account to me, open up your TikTok, open up your actual like tools,
Hmm.
and then let me look at them and let me come back to you with what I think. So all of the ability to get those things was really just getting access to their tools and then looking at the business from like a data perspective, which is really what I learned in trading stock options.
Hmm.
I really just approached it that way. And then I came back to them, I'm like, here's your report card. You have an A here, you have an F here, you have a D here, you have a C here. And then, for example, I think you're wasting $5 million on
Hmm.
spending. And I think we need to take that money and reinvest it in getting more of our customers to buy more from us. And I think we need these 3 tools, and I think we need these 3 people that you don't have right now.
Yeah.
And so really it was about what I came back with, the recommendation. So that I think is what generated the success. And then, I mean, there's times, I can say that there's times that I looked at the business and, like, here's an example. If you have a business, and this is, I think, really important for your podcast, at the end of the day, it's about COGS to MSRP. COGS is cost of goods sold. MSRP is the suggested retail price, right?
Yeah.
So and I'm going to digress a little bit to go forward. So
Okay.
if you have a beauty brand, like I work with Elf Cosmetics, which I'm sure
Hmm.
you may
Yeah.
not have heard of it, but they're big. So they were selling makeup for $1. And now, of course, our average order value in the shopping cart was not $1, it was way above that.
Hmm.
But when they're selling, like, say, for example, the average order value in the cart was $20.
Hmm.
Their margin on that sale that they charge a customer was like literally 30% of the average ticket. So if
Right.
when I'm, so when you think about the cost of goods being like $6, for example, I'm just
Yeah.
giving you examples, right?
Hmm.
And then the rest of that's profit. It's not necessarily profit because you have to acquire those customers.
Yeah.
There's a cost of acquiring customers. So really what I would teach a lot of clients is, if you don't have a minimum of 45 to 50% plus in
Hmm.
the cost of COGS versus your suggested sale price, don't bother doing e-commerce or D2C. It just
Right.
doesn't make sense. So that, I think, is a really important lesson. If you're trying to sell t-shirts for $20 and it costs you $15 manufacture, there's no reason for you to be in e-commerce. You have
Yeah.
to at least have 45 to 50% margin in profit. And it's not, I say profit, it's not, again, you have to then take out your costs for advertising and marketing. You
Yeah.
have to take out the cost for your team, to hire your team, whatever that is,
Hmm.
agency or in-house. So when we would go down that path, they're like, oh, okay. So
Yeah.
I would literally tell them, this product is not going to ever work. So just shelve it, like shut down the business,
Hmm.
because you're never going to be profitable. Running at a 10% or 30% margin, not including your marketing costs, it's just a death march.
Yeah.
It's a waste of time. So for you, if you wanted to do an e-commerce business or, a direct consumer business, I would always recommend something that has a repeat or retention or membership, somewhere where there's an auto renew in
Right.
the mix, where you're automatically shipping like skincare every month to them.
Yeah.
You're not enrolling them in that. You can offer that as an option, but a product that someone's going to want to buy every month or every 6 months.
So when you're starting out, like, your margins are going to be very different from when you're starting out, and then economies of scale obviously are going to bring those margins a lot higher and
Yes.
bring more
Yes.
profit. When you're evaluating that, should you even be looking at that when you're starting out your brand? Should you be looking down the line and going, what
Oh my
could this
God, yes.
be? Or yeah.
100%.
But
So
then what?
we would build waterfalls. So we would build
Mhm.
a bottoms up business model, and then we would do a top down, and then we'd see how we do the
Okay.
forecasting. So typically a lot of the organizations I worked with had a whole finance team, and then they had a marketing team, and I'm like, these 2 people are not talking. So we would build the forecast, the bottoms up and the top down, and then we would work with their finance team and their marketing team to validate the numbers. And
Right.
then we're like, okay, let's spend the money. And then we'd invest 90 days of money to see if the business would
Mhm.
work. And then we would revisit again. So it wasn't like sign on the dotted line for 1 year. It was
Right.
3 month tranches. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Just like thinking
Good.
about from when you're
Yeah.
starting out, like
Yeah.
say you're with 30% margin, whether you'll ever get to that 50%, it can be hard to see initially because you could think you
Hmm.
can and then evaluating whether it's worth it.
Yeah. It's different. Yeah.
And then you mentioned something as well about the report cards and going into a company and you're looking at all the data. So other than the
Yeah.
margins, when you're first entering a company, I imagine, especially the big ones, there's going to be so much data available. What are you looking at
Yeah.
specifically and pulling the different metrics? What ones are you
Yeah.
ignoring?
So we'd first look at what happens at your store. So your store is your website, your store is
Mm-hmm.
your app. Your store is, anything that's wherever things are purchased, your store is your Amazon store, for example, your Shopify storefront. So we would look at those stats first. And it would be really interesting, Kaya, because say, for example, there was 10,000 visitors to the website in a month and 90% aborted on the homepage. They bounced. That's a
Yeah.
terminology. If 90% bounced on the page you directed them to, something's wrong with the traffic that you sent
Mm-hmm.
them to, whether that was from an influencer, for example,
Yeah.
or from a paid media campaign, or something's wrong with the page you're sending them to. Either there's a load time issue or there's a messaging issue, but there's a mismatch
Mm-hmm.
between the two. So we'd first look at that. And then we would look then our second analysis at the same time in tandem, we look at the customer. So we would do a customer file analysis. So if there's 3,000 customers, for example, or 10,000 customers, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
there's a point where it doesn't make sense because you have to have statistical significance. So we would
Yeah.
like to look at least 5,000 customers, but we would analyze the customer file to understand who is the customer that's actually buying. Is the customer a woman in her 40s or is it a woman in her 20s buying this lipstick, right? And then we look at that data and then we look at the traffic that drove to the website where, wait a minute,
Yeah.
you're targeting men or adults, but yet this is a female product.
Right.
So there's a mismatch with what you're doing on your marketing versus who the ideal customer is. If we keep getting business and repeat business from these types of customers, then we need to find those customers online. So
Mm-hmm.
and then we need to optimize the website because something's wrong with the load time, something's wrong with
Yeah.
or like and typically for e-commerce you want to look there's benchmarks. There's benchmarks for every vertical in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you have a 1% conversion rate from the traffic coming to your website to the
Mm-hmm.
people buying, you want to look at all of the entire
The funnel.
conversion
Yeah.
funnel. You want to look at the ad targeting, you want to look at who the influencer is, you want to look at what landing page. You want to look at did they add to the cart? Did they abort in the cart?
Mm-hmm.
Did they, so and then the people that aborted, what is your remarketing strategy to outbound them to get them to buy because
Right.
they weren't ready to buy? That doesn't mean they're not interested. They just weren't ready to buy then. So it sounds like probably a lot, but you have to think about it in buckets. You analyze the
Yeah.
customer data, you analyze the website data, you analyze what the targeting is to acquire customers and the ad creative and the funnel.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I mean, we had a lot of businesses that were also drive to retail. So it was an ad, and the whole purpose of that ad online was to get them to go to a store,
Mm-hmm.
like a Sephora, for example. So we look at that too. It's not a one size fits all is my easiest way of saying it
Yeah.
to you. But we have at the end of the day, we have to start with the data, and then the data tells us a story, and then we have to validate that, and we have to go through the process.
So when you're looking at that data, especially because, yeah, you've worked with Fortune 500 companies and they have this massive amount of data that you can pull from, but you've also worked with startups and brands that are just starting
Yeah,
out. When you don't have that
yeah,
number of customers, how are you looking at, like, obviously there's not the same statistical significance with those numbers. How are you
yeah.
finding out what's relevant, what's not?
Well, you start broad. You always start broad.
Mm-hmm.
You don't start niche because you wanna know what the data tells you. So we would start broad, and I say broad like all audiences, and then let's see who are the clickers and who are the buyers, and what are the differences between the clickers and the buyers.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it goes back to in every startup, you have to first validate the data and make sure there's enough data coming through. So you have to spend enough in order to see something come through. You can't spend $100 and think that that's going to be
Yeah.
enough money. So you have to invest money in marketing, and then you have to read the data, and then you would then I would say rinse, repeat, meaning you're testing and iterating and testing and iterating until you have a winning combination. That could take almost 9 months, but you're not going to
Yeah.
spend millions of dollars. You're going to spend enough to get statistical significance. And with AI, you're reading it on the fly. You don't have to wait
Yeah.
6 months. You're looking at it every day. You're managing it like hands on the dial every day. You're managing it. So
Hmm.
it's actually it's like going to the gym every day, honestly. You're looking at your data every day, you're going to the gym every day. It's the same thing. You're just looking at it and you're like, okay, well then what should I do different to get a better result?
Hmm.
And then iterating. So startups, as long as the margins, like I said, the
Yeah.
MSRP versus the cost of goods are healthy, then you should it enables you to do a lot of testing. And you don't have to invest a crazy amount of money. It's really about how much do you need to spend to deliver statistical significance.
Yeah. And so then when you're
Yeah.
looking at the analytics daily, if you're seeing that a campaign isn't performing as you thought or maybe isn't working out so well, how do you know when to leave it? Like how long should you leave it versus
Yep.
when just pulling the plug and just cutting your losses?
It goes down to statistical significance.
Yeah.
So in some arenas, depending on the type of campaign, it could be as early as you would know after like 100 orders
Hmm.
or 15 in direct mail, it's 1,500 orders. So, I mean, the statistical significance tip usually was in the old school days was about number of orders.
Hmm.
In the age of AI, the machine learning tells you we're at significance now, and it's a dog or it's a winner. So you're really like you don't have to do so much analysis. You can just see it come in,
Hmm.
and then you can tell it to pivot for you or auto optimize, and so
Right.
it's actually a lot easier nowadays.
Yeah.
But back to the rule of thumb, it's usually about 100 orders significance. But
Okay.
if you spent like $100,000 or 10,000, if you spent $10,000 and not one person went to your website,
You got a problem.
yeah, you have a
Yeah.
problem. Yeah, yeah,
Obviously, as well, you've had a lot much bigger budgets, and you were saying that you managed over
yeah,
$5 billion overall. This, I imagine, would
yeah,
give quite a rare vantage point, especially because, well, one, the more money, you can just put more money into the same ads. But do you think that having a bigger budget, is there anything, like any unique insights that you're getting from being able to
yeah.
spend it a different way?
Well, I've managed all types of media.
Hmm.
So I think at the end of the day, it's about having a diverse portfolio.
Yeah.
You know, the reality I'll use digital media as an example. Sorry, I have a
No
cold, I
worries.
think, coming on, so I keep itching my nose. So in digital, it's like the 80/20 rule. 80% of your budget is spent on the big ones. So it's Meta, it's
Hmm.
Google, it's, Amazon. So
Yeah.
most of your money is spent there. So, and then you really needed, my biggest message always was you need to diversify because those are the big power players. There are entire businesses that were built not using any of those three channels
Hmm.
at all. They went wide, meaning like 50 different vendors are
Yeah.
publishers, and they went deep with those publishers. So like there are a lot of examples of that. I also think it's the harder way to build the business, but I think you need to have a world where you start with getting your data down inside major platforms because
Hmm.
they make it so easy for you to do it. They make it so easy. And so I would start with those, but I would quickly diversify because what happens is your cost per visitor goes to like $2 a visitor,
Hmm.
and like that's just it won't make sense for certain products. If you go to those other publishers, meaning a diverse portfolio, those other publishers might be 10 cents a visitor or 50 cents a visitor.
Hmm.
So while you may not get as much scale, you'll get efficient cost per customer acquisition. So you
Right.
really have to have a portfolio, but you should start with the big guys at least to get some numbers down.
Hmm.
I've seen it work both ways. I've seen it work both ways. I've seen many things work many ways. What's interesting is I've seen a lot of clients recently doing lead generation, like where
Hmm.
they're just giving away sweepstakes, enter to
Yeah.
win a winner every day. And you're capturing their name, their email, their postal address,
Hmm.
their sometimes age. And then you're using that data, and then you're just using a data onboarder to then find and identify those consumers in platforms. And then you actually remarketing to them after they became a lead. They're just a lead to you.
Yeah.
They're not a buyer. And that is extremely efficient. So I like lead generation because it's just easier
Yeah.
to start. I call it stock the pond, building your list of people who are interested. And you're not giving away a car, you're giving away your own product, and you're not giving away too much because you already have, you know what your margins are.
And when you're doing that lead generation, is that you're putting it up on your website, you're doing meta ads for it because you
It's
still need to promote
yeah,
it?
you're just
Yeah.
using every platform has their own lead generation like kind of
Yeah.
methodology, and then that you could send it all. They could even fill out that lead generation form inside of Instagram. You don't have to leave Instagram to go to someone's
Yeah.
website to fill out a form. You can definitely generate leads from across many platforms across the web. And then what you do is then you then remarket to those leads, and then you measure the quality. Like,
Mm.
did 10% of those leads turn into a sale? That would be
Yeah.
a good number. Did 0 or 1% turn into sale? Oh, that'd be a bad, that means those leads are not good leads. So you have to think about the publisher that you're generating the leads with.
Right.
Because if it's just a bunch of sweepstakes, meaning like there's a company called Publishers Clearinghouse, which I like, but it's all people that are looking for discounts and deals, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't have big wallets, they don't buy a lot
Yeah.
online. Those leads might not convert. You might have a 1% conversion.
And then what would be some of the other, you're talking about other diverse marketing channels as well that are besides,
Yeah.
Instagram and Meta and
Well,
TikTok?
there's so many. I mean, I'm a huge fan of podcasts. They perform really, really well. I'm a huge fan of what they call alternative media, which are direct mail inserts or package inserts. So when you purchase a product from like Tempur-Pedic beds, I would insert a package insert of try my skincare cream
Mm.
risk-free trial for 30 days and put that package insert inside that Tempur-Pedic, because a Tempur-Pedic buyer is someone who's affluent,
Yeah. And you'd
right?
be
They
going to
have money.
Tempur-Pedic and
Yeah,
asking
and you
whether that's
go,
something
yeah,
you could.
it's like a they usually charge you a cost per thousand, or they do a
Mm-hmm.
co-marketing partnership deal where you do a rev share. So you would pay for the printing of that insert. You'd
Yeah.
pay for that as the marketer. They would put it into the box of Tempur-Pedic, and then if a sale came through, it would be like a 50-50 split of the revenue from that, or you
Right.
pay a cost per thousand. I love alt media. I love radio. I love direct mail. There's, to me, I'm agnostic to the channel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very performance driven. So it's all about sales, revenue, and
Mm-hmm.
cost per acquisition. So I'm all about from the math mind.
Yeah.
So I don't care what media it is. All media works at a certain price.
Yeah.
And to me, when I see these startup brands and they want to do these huge campaigns and these awareness campaigns and these pop-up shops, and I'm just like, that's very expensive and very risky. I'd rather approach performance marketing first, which is very grounded in building your data and leads and sales. And then your next phase 2 could be pop-up shops, for example.
Yeah. Once you've built that awareness.
And you could just do it locally. I mean, you could build awareness in Qashqai's. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not hard. And you could have like a little pop-up shop inside Qashqai shopping.
Yeah. And you
Yeah.
talk a lot as well about, having innovation within your marketing, creating these campaigns that are very innovative. When you're thinking about now, like with the growth of social network platforms and AI, how are you
Yeah.
approaching that innovation mindset? And have you seen any campaigns recently? I
Well,
know that have
I
sparked.
think I think influencers are here to stay and a huge part of your business model in terms of
Mm-hmm.
acquiring customers and marketing. I think that you just have to look at each influencer in terms of an ROI. But I mean, I have many of my friends who've built businesses without spending $1 on paid advertising.
Hmm.
You know, case in point, my son, he's never spent a dime in paid advertising, and it's all been through incentivizing influencers. So
Right.
influencers will promote your product. If they have a huge following on X, for
Yeah.
example, formerly known as Twitter, you promote your product and or service, the influencer promotes it. And then if anyone signs up with that specific sign up link,
Doing affiliate
then they get.
marketing.
Yes, I love
Yeah.
affiliate marketing. I'm a huge fan of affiliate. I've been doing affiliate marketing for, oh my God, longer than you want to know. Longer than you want to know. Yeah, I think going about it that way is super successful.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, influencer or paid me, it doesn't matter. It all boils down to the math and the cost to acquire that customer.
Yeah.
however you get
And so you've talked a lot about the different medias and the ways of marketing, but you've also worked with a lot of different brands in different industries. You know, you've done CPG, home goods, apparel. Is there a
there.
different way that you approach every industry, or is there something that you find the same within
Yeah.
everyone?
Well, it's interesting. So there's an approach that isn't too far. I mean, they're very different. I mean, someone who's buying home goods or furniture is very different than someone who's buying
Hmm.
makeup is very different than someone who's buying clothes. But we all do that. Like you
Yeah.
buy makeup, you buy clothes, you buy. I mean, it's at a certain stage. You know, if you're buying furniture for your first, when you're on your first apartment, right? You're adulting, right? So there's a playbook for each, right? But what's really interesting is when you have enough customer data, I'm going to go back to the same point.
Hmm.
You then analyze what their affinities are. Their
Yeah.
affinities. So people who are buying, for example, these shoes,
Hmm.
well, they also like these other brand. They also have an affinity to these other brands.
Right.
And in doing that analysis, which is available, you have to buy the data and
Hmm.
analyze the data, but the data is available. And then I'm like, okay, well, this is my blueprint to go out to those other brands that there's
Yeah.
an affinity to and say, hey, I just analyze my customers and they have an affinity to your brand, and talk to that brand and be like, can we do a co-marketing deal where I'll send your products promotion out to my email database
Hmm.
and then you promote me to yours. And that's what all these collabs are about. The collabs are super important, but you have to first get enough customers to understand what their affinities are.
And then
Yeah.
as well, like, well, this is about more the internal of your company, but when you started the Dumont Project itself,
Yeah.
what was that like starting that company?
It was very different because it wasn't an agency model. It was very much like the thinking behind Dumont and why it was as successful as it was is that I really felt in my core that my job is to help the client
Hmm.
grow their business more efficiently. And I want to help them bring in all the right tools, bring in all the right people,
Yeah.
and then apply the right processes, meaning, all the different testing and everything. So my job was to teach them. It's almost like the analogy of a tandem bike. I don't know, what tandem
Yeah.
bike is.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, my team was doing all the pedaling and the steering, doing all
Hmm.
the work, right? And then the client was in the back seat, right? In the
Yeah.
back of the bike. Like, so I'm doing
Just
the work.
chilling.
And then success for a client in Dumont was that we'd give them all the tools, we would help them hire the people, we bring in all the right processes. And then
Hmm.
in 2 years, we should be out because they've
Right.
achieved that success. And that really resonated with clients because they were tired of paying agencies commissions and commissions and commissions
Hmm.
forever and fees and fees. And so that message really resonated well because really I was teaching them how to fish, if you think, or teach them how to
Yeah.
ride the bike. And then what ended up happening in almost all instances is the client's like, we don't want you to go.
Stay.
What's new? What's new? Let's do new. You do all the new stuff. You bring on the new tools. And so that was really successful. Where I think with my experience nowadays, especially now that I'm in this place in my life, which is I'm really blessed to be here, is that I really at my core, I just really like to help business owners. I really like to help women.
Hmm.
Just to be very honest, I
Yeah.
think that female business owners, entrepreneurs are my favorites, but I mean, entrepreneurs my favorites. But I really, in my core, I want to help them. And if
Hmm.
I can use my knowledge and my know-how to help them, then that's success for me nowadays.
Actually, I wanted to talk a little bit more about that point in particular,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
because like the world of business is so male dominated. Was that ever something that crossed your mind? Were you ever intentional about
Yeah.
having this? Like, did you ever feel, I don't know, disadvantaged as a female founder and have to be intentional about proving yourself? Or is that something that didn't even cross your
Well,
mind?
you always feel like you're the underdog. It does, I mean, at
Yeah.
least I did. But I used it to I would use my knowledge. I just ended up preparing more for things. So I wouldn't
Hmm.
just walk into a meeting blind. I had all my data ready, all
Yeah.
my comments ready, all my PowerPoint ready, whatever my Canva, whatever I had, I would be very prepared.
Hmm.
And so, and it sounds like a very basic thing to say, but I was very prepared because a lot of times they didn't listen because I was a woman,
Yeah.
and it was a male dominated, and that's just the reality of what it was. I did feel like the underdog, but that actually made me even prepare more.
Right.
So it was, and then when I was around female environments, sometimes it was like, backstabbing, to be honest.
Mm.
But I would try and turn that around as much because I was coming at it with Dumont with, I'm here to help. And if you're not going to listen to my
Yeah.
recommendations and if you're not going to implement recommendations, there's no reason for me to be here.
Hmm.
So it was easy to just like stay or
Yeah.
leave. So there's plenty of other people waiting in line to work with
Yeah.
us. So it wasn't like we didn't have a new business issue.
And then when
Yeah.
Dumont started to grow and you started to hire and you scaled it over, I think, roughly 40
Yeah.
people, well, how did you
Yeah.
know from a hiring perspective when to make that first hire? And then what was your first hire
Yeah.
at Dumont?
Well, first hire was data,
Okay.
because it starts with data. And then it really was at that time, this is years ago, it was organic. So SEO
Yeah.
was a foundation because it's like foundation pieces of digital marketing. And so that's really what we did. And I would say when we analyzed the company, the people, it was in every position was a female except for my chief financial officer. It was a female led business. Every one of my departments was headed by a woman. So it was just that they were really really good and they deserved to be the promotions. And it just came across that way. All of the executive team, there was only one man, and so it was totally the opposite of the client side,
Yeah.
which is very traditional, very corporate, and it was mostly men, not women. So I think it just happened to be that way that the women were much better.
Were you intentional about that, or it just happened to be, those were the people that presented?
I just saw so much in these people, so much
Yeah.
in these women, and so much potential. And I just watched them blossom. And that was, I think, I would say one of the most rewarding things. It wasn't
Yeah.
about the money. It was about watching them grow and they were stretching themselves. When I say that, I mean that they stretch
Hmm.
themselves. And I care about every one of them. From every business I've been a part of, a lot of them to this day still reach out to me and said,
Oh,
you
that's
made
lovely.
such a difference in my life. And that's why I feel like that's where my center is in helping female entrepreneurs.
And then when you were creating that, and you obviously created this very nice environment where they felt represented and they felt heard,
Yeah.
how were you
Yeah.
intentional in creating that value and creating that environment and space that they could blossom and grow?
I reflect on it every day, every single day. It was part of my daily life. I was
Yeah.
intentional because I would look at that. And when I saw a problem, it was hard. Sometimes I would try to ignore it, but I'm like, it's like a cancer. If something's not working, it's not working. So I think that would be a life lesson I learned. It's like fail fast and then fire fast.
Yeah.
So I think I was a little soft with certain people, but
Mhm.
at the end of the day, I'm super proud of what I've accomplished. And
Yeah.
when my company was acquired, it was a great acquisition. And I saw such greatness in cart.com, such greatness. And Omer was great leader. He's still there. He's a great leader. But I saw so much greatness in what we were going to do there. And I'd say most of the people that were at Dumont are still at cart.com, and they just did their most recent valuation of 1.6 billion.
Wow.
So yeah, really proud to be a part of that. I was there after the acquisition, I was there
Hmm.
for a long time, and now I just get to watch it as an investor.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
What was that acquisition process like? Like, what was the spark that led to that change and that transition?
Yeah.
And then you transitioned into Chief Customer Officer at
Yeah.
Cart.com.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, we were in cart very early. We were in cart like there was only one acquisition before
Really?
ours. Yeah, very, very early. But I fell in love with the investor deck. I really loved
Hmm.
the vision. I thought it was unique. And I really did. And I saw many things that it needed in
Hmm.
terms of many more facets. And the CEO was a great listener. He was a great listener. And so I was able to impart my expertise. And even in a conference like last year at Web Summit, one of the original co-founders with him,
Yeah.
he's a great man too. And he's at the Web Summit speaking. He's like, yeah, we use Don's slides to this day and Don's philosophy to this day.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. So, and he's the great guy. These are great people. So just kind of reflecting, the acquisition it felt like a good marriage, to be honest.
Mm.
I felt like my team had really great skills to help the company grow. And that the growth trajectory and the plan was lots of acquisitions of
Hmm.
other companies to grow revenue. And that I felt that my team was really well trained in retention, because at the end of the day, you can say it's a sales problem. In business, sales solves a lot of problems, but if you can't keep your customers, you don't have business. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel. You can't be like 90% new customers, 10% repeat. It's got to be like 80% of our revenue comes from repeat customers and 20% comes from like you have to pivot at some time. And the acquisitions of each of the companies had really good customer retention. So there was a similar thread. Now, some of them weren't profitable, to be frank, and I can't talk much more about that,
Yeah.
but those were able to be turned around, and the leadership did a great job in that.
And
Yeah.
how did your role shift then after the acquisition?
It was all focused on the customers because,
Yeah.
you're talking to all the customers. So it was definitely a pivot, but it was a really good pivot because with all the acquisitions of the different companies, you would talk to those customers and you would understand what their pain points are. And they would even tell you, I'm not happy right now with this company. I'm like, oh, let
Right.
me elevate that to another group, right?
Yeah.
But they would also tell you what their pain points were with their business, which was the most important thing. And so I'm like, well, we should be designing a product to take care of this. And they're like, we need someone to manage our Amazon business. And if you guys offer that, we would give you a shot at the business. I'm like, oh,
Right.
we need we need this solution. We need that. So to help with us actually our acquisition strategy, but also would help us with our retention because there were teams that were focused on that. So if you stay close to the customer, they'll tell you a lot. And then it's really on you then to decide to pivot and change. So help them become a happy customer or help sell more things to the customer because it's something that they want from you and they respect you. And so it goes both ways.
Is there a level, do you think, of consumer psychology that plays into that and keeping the clients happy? And then also because it's a marketing business and thinking about the consumers for those clients. Do you ever consider that when you're looking at your data?
You have to always be talking to your customers. And that doesn't mean you personally, but even your advertising, your LinkedIn posts.
Yeah.
You have to keep giving them a reason to stay with you. You have to give them news stories. You have to give them case studies because they only talk to you like once a week for like 30 minutes or whatever, and sometimes once a quarter, which again, those are things that are important. You really that's where the secret sauce is. That is staying within that world and learning from that. I may have repeated myself, but I think that's super important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, just to wrap this up, the scene is yours. Is there anything else that you wanted to share that you haven't shared yet today?
I really think that that's a big one, but I really think that there are a lot of great opportunities here. I mean, I think that, where you can invest your time, right? I look at the younger groups and I feel like all of them can do a business and build a business. They just have to have the right mentors.
Yeah.
And they have to have the right metrics. It's like the M's and the M's, and then they have to have all the other pieces. So I feel like I would encourage any of if their mindset is of that, especially in their like late teens to 20s. If I were them, I would make money as fast as you possibly can. And again, I'm a capitalist, so I just want to be very clear. It's nice to be an artist and it's nice to paint and it's nice to create music, but that doesn't make money, or very few make money in that. So you have to think about what service and or product you want to have or what you want to create, but something that will get customers to come back. Every business has to tie back to how I get more customers to repeat and to retain each and every month or each and every quarter. So I feel like there's a time to make money, and I think it's in your 20s. You can do it in your 50s, you can do it in your 40s, you can do it at any of those ages, but making in your 20s, what is amazing about the 20s is that you then have compounding interest.
Yeah.
So if you make your money when you're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, you literally, if you're able to make, 7 figures, 6 figures even, you pack that away and you invest it. And literally it gives you a 10% return, 15% return every year. And then all of a sudden by the time you're 30, you've already doubled your money.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you to do that. I would encourage anyone your age to do that.
And on that note of compounding, do you think it's better to try, say, a lot of little side businesses or many things, give it all a go, or one and just put everything into it?
No, try. It's like see what sticks to wall. And I mean, even if you're spending $5,000 on building an app, build the
Hmm.
app. And if it fails, great. What did you learn? Move on to the next. As fast as it's like fail fast and try. It doesn't have to be big because the consumers are going to tell you whether they like it or not.
Hmm.
So the consumers are going to tell you everything. So that's why I'm like, try again.
Yeah. Fail
Yeah.
fast.
Yes. And do it early, like literally, if you can do it starting in high school, start it in high school.
Hmm.
That's my recommendation. Some parents won't agree with you. Some parents want you to go to college. And I agree. I wanted my older son to go to college and he went for 2 years and
And then,
he's super successful.
yeah.
Yeah, you can up Hunter Isaacson. You can look him up. But my point is that he was on a mission and he was driven.
Hmm.
Now, not everybody is built to be an entrepreneur, but try it. Try
Yeah.
it in your 20s, try it in your teens. Like keep trying. Your
And
parents will help you.
yeah. And if someone wants to
Yeah.
reach out to you, what are the best ways for them to contact you?
Honestly, the best is LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn not every day, but I'm on LinkedIn and I get a lot of messages almost every day from people. So I do respond to those messages. So LinkedIn would be the best way to reach me.
Okay, I'll link that in the show notes. And thank you. That's a wrap.